My son's camera monitor alerted in the middle of the night. I checked it and saw my wife and son sitting on the bed. They weren't my wife and son, part 2. I'm sorry it's taken so long, it's been an emotional month. I felt like I'm losing my mind or already lost it. I've been in the hospital for 3 weeks. You'll remember I left off at my wife's parents' house, not sure what the hell to do. My wife and I argued about it and my in-laws said to call the priest. I told my wife we're calling the cops and that's it. The day we finally called the cops would be day 6. Not my family was still sitting on the goddamn bed staring at the camera. I told the dispatcher there were intruders in my house, leaving out the part where they looked exactly like my family. I told her we were out of the house but I would meet the police there. My wife begged me not to go. I told her I had to be there because I had a foolproof plan. I would take her mum's iPhone and FaceTime with my wife while showing the police the camera on my phone. They would see this as a fluffed up situation and hopefully proceed with caution. My co-worker friend said he would come with me as well. My friend and I beat the cops to my house. Like most of you mentioned in the comments previously, I was packing heat. I have a concealed carry, so I had my 1911 45 on me. I was not concerned this would bother the cops as I was going to inform them of my permit and that I was currently carrying. What I wasn't going to tell them was that I had my father-in-law's AR-15 in my trunk. It's almost funny how many of you mentioned that was the way to go in my previous entry. I didn't plan on telling the cops about it because I'm not planning on needing it. They would come armed and prepared. They showed up and I let them know I was armed and then enacted my plan. I initially told them the story. They looked at each other like I was crazy and they didn't believe me. I FaceTimed with my wife so they could see she was not in fact in the house despite what our camera was showing. They still didn't seem to believe me, but this did pique their interest. I hung up with my wife and told her I'd call her back as soon as we know something. So now we're sure this isn't a recording, an officer stated, repeating what I said. It's not. The day and night cycle has changed every day. The blinking is erratic and not cyclical like it was a repeat, I said. I know it's a stupid question, but your wife isn't a twin? The other officer asked. I told him no. My friend spoke up. I have an idea. Turn the volume up and I'll go throw a pebble at the window. He went around back while I turned up the volume to max. Okay, I'm tossing. We heard the light tick sound from outside, but the 1-second delay on the camera came in loud and clear through my phone. Not my wife moved at the sound of the pebble hitting the window, the first time I'd actually seen her move aside from the time she wasn't on screen when I initially went inside her house the first day. She turned her head towards the window just slightly before turning back to the camera. Okay, so this is live, the officer said. Okay, sir, I need you and your friend to stay outside here. We're gonna go in and find out what's going on here. Should you ask for more units? I asked hopefully. Not at this time. We're going to assess the situation first. They don't appear to be armed, but we're going to be cautious. I opened the garage for them and they made their way towards my kitchen door. They radioed dispatch that they were headed in and to stand by. They disappeared into my house. A few seconds after they went in, the camera went out. I wanted to vomit and I felt like if I put my fingers in my mouth, I'd be able to feel my heart since it had leapt so far up into my throat. Shit! I yelled to my friend. I immediately popped the trunk and got my rifle out and ran into the garage, my friend right behind me. We got inside just in time to hear a low, guttural howl from upstairs, demonic sounding almost, along with raised voices from the police. There were several shots. Need backup! Shots fired! He was cut off. Oh my god! My friend howled. He was scared shitless, but so was I. God fluffing dammit, I knew it! I said, running up the stairs. My son's room is the first one you come to after getting upstairs, so his wall is also what you see as you walk up the stairs. As I reached the top, I laid into the wall with my rifle. It has a 30-round magazine, but I felt like I fired 100 shots. I fired all over the place, knowing full well the ammo would go through the wall like it was paper, concentrating on where my son's bed would be, but also near the door and towards the floor as well, in case whatever these things were thought to duck. We heard shrieks of pain coming from the room. Then nothing. My friend and I paused for a minute before deciding to go in because the camera was still out. We heard a whimpering coming from the room. There was a dead cop in the hallway we had to step over. It was awful, and I'll never be able to unsee it. His head was several feet away from his body in the threshold to our guest room. We found the other cop in my son's room right outside the doorway. He had several large holes in his torso as if he'd been impaled. Exactly what I was afraid would happen had happened. I called the cops and whatever these things were killed them. When we entered the room, we found the source of the whimpering was not my wife. She was laying on her back on the floor, holding a torso that was bullet-ridden and breathing heavily. The scene was awful. I can hardly put into words how awful it was. I know now, just like I did then, they weren't my family. It shouldn't have been hard. I should have been able to just go in and finish it, but instead I fell to my knees. Not my wife begged for her life. "I don't want to die, honey," she whimpered. "I wanted to have more kids. I can't die now." I looked over at not my son, who had to be dead. He'd taken 2 shots at least to the head or what was left of it. He had several more in his torso and 1 or 2 on his legs and arms. If you have kids, seeing their lifeless, bullet-ridden body is a special kind of hell. Again, I knew it wasn't my son, but it was. I was going to be sick. I killed my family. I turned back to not my wife. She was acting just like my wife. It even mimicked her anxiety about death that she has had in the past year or so. "It's not her, man." I forgot my friend was even there. "It's not her. Shoot it." "Please don't shoot me," it begged. My hands were shaking as I aimed at it. Why couldn't I do it? I knew this wasn't my wife. "Listen, man," my friend began calmly. "Look at it. Its blood is yellow. It's not your family." Was it yellow? It was. Seeing my family slain so traumatic, I hadn't even noticed their blood wasn't red. I steadied my aim and not my wife suddenly stopped begging. She began that guttural, terrifying shriek, and something black or grey started to protrude from her mouth like a tentacle or something, and I fired. At that range, her head more or less exploded. Whatever these things were, they appeared to be mortal. I was still on my knees and my friend was out in the hallway just outside the door. We heard the sounds of approaching police sirens. I'd forgotten one of the cops had a shots fired called over the radio before being killed. It seemed like it had been hours, but it had only been about 5 minutes since the police had gone in. My friend went downstairs to let the police know what to expect. I stood up and slowly made my way into the hallway. I was lightheaded and felt like I was going to be sick. My bedroom is adjacent to my son's, so the doorway is about a foot to the right of my son's doorway. My door was closed, but as I exited my son's room, my door opened. Not me walked out into the hallway, wearing exactly the same thing I was at the time. I was shocked in place. I couldn't move, but it did. It walked towards me, and its right arm turned black and morphed into what appeared to be a tentacle. It was wiggling around like a squid or octopus appendage. When he thrust his arm at me, it solidified and impaled me through the abdomen. It then stabbed me in the left leg. I fell to the ground in pain. Its tentacle arm was wiggling again. "Why did you kill my family?" it asked. When it spoke, its voice changed pitch several times. It was my voice, then much deeper, then normal again. It alternated several times saying that one sentence. It moved in closer. The rifle was gone by. I still had my .45. I pulled it out and got a shot off in its right knee. It howled. As Not Me fell to its knees, I fired a couple more shots, getting 2 in its abdomen and left side of its ribs. It breathed heavily for a few seconds before I used the last of my strength to aim proper and shot Not Me in the face. Its blood was also yellow. I lay there bleeding, thinking this was it for sure. I still had some strength from adrenaline kicking in, so I took my belt off and tried to make a tourniquet for my leg. With my stomach wound, it was hard to give it a good yank to tighten it. I then took my shirt off and balled it up and packed my stomach and applied as much pressure as I could. Being a nurse probably saved my life. I passed out, but the measures I took must have kept me alive long enough for the EMS to arrive. I heard raised voices and the sound of pounding come up the stairs before I went out. It was probably a cop, but I felt pressure from somebody trying to keep my wound packed before I went out. I was in and out of consciousness as EMS arrived. along with probably every cop in the city. I was wheeled downstairs and put into the ambulance, but while I was being loaded onto the gurney upstairs, I heard cops freaking out, and rightfully so. They'd lost 2 brothers and there were 3 other bodies. Did he kill his brother? Are they twins? Probably referring to not me's dead body. Or his whole family. Put him on armed guard while at the hospital. He'll probably be getting charged. As I was getting placed into the ambulance, I saw my friend talking to a group of about 10 cops, all listening very intently to what he was saying. I went out again in the ambulance. I woke up in the ER. My wounds had been treated. The tentacle hadn't been more than a few inches wide, so it was just slightly larger than a large knife. They'd sewn me up, and I found that I was currently receiving a blood transfusion due to a lot of blood loss at my home. My wife had authorized them to do whatever they needed while I was unconscious. She was also extremely pissed that I went into the house. We're okay now, but that's a story for another day. Midway through my hospital stay, men with suits came to pay me a visit. They were government, I knew right away. They said they were FBI, but I don't know if I believe that. They wanted to talk about not my family. The police chief and the coroner were involved, and it was all very hush-hush. They made it clear this was not to get out to the public. We're going to move on from here. I told everyone at work that it was a home invasion and they bought it. I'll go back to work in a couple weeks and we'll start looking for a new house. Again, I'm sorry. I know everyone wanted a concrete ending and to know exactly what the fluff those things were. But we just don't know. Aliens sound good to me. I've been thinking if they were supernatural or actual demons, gunfire wouldn't have been able to kill them. It's just hard to say. If they were aliens, why did they just sit there and creep in our house for a week? They didn't even try to take over our lives. It's hard to wrap my head around all this. If it is aliens, keep your eyes peeled out there. There could be more of them.
Thanks for watching, and please don't forget to subscribe to Reddit Originals for more videos like this. Oh, and hit the bell icon to stay updated on all our videos. We upload a video each day, so stay tuned.